Hello and welcome to Lake Orion Sports Update. I'm your host Joey Tysick, and today we recap the start of the season for the boys and girls varsity lacrosse teams, varsity girls soccer, varsity softball, as well as track. The Dragons varsity baseball team looked to make a strong start to their season in their opening home game against Bishop Foley on April 9th. The first 3 innings were a back-and-forth affair with each team scoring runs in each inning. However, the Dragons managed to pull away after a 4-run inning in the 4th, leading to a 14-6 victory. Chris Hegg singled, scoring 2 runs, and then an error by Bishop Foley scored another 2 runs. The 6th inning also had the Dragons' bats come alive as they racked up 5 runs with Josh Slayton, Ryan McClellan, Jared Strauss, Chris Hegg, and Jake Rydquist, each getting RBIs. Matt Williams picked up the win for Lake Orion in the game after giving up no runs in 1 hit with a strikeout through 1 inning. Josh Slayton started the game for Lake Orion, going 3 innings, allowing 5 runs on 6 hits with 3 strikeouts. Lake Orion finished the game with 14 hits in the game, with Kobe Manzo and Jake Rydquist with 3 hits apiece. The following day, the Dragons would have to travel for an away game against Notre Dame Prep. The Dragons had found themselves down 1-6 going into the 5th inning, when the Lake Orion bats came alive, scoring 6 runs with Chris Hegg getting the go-ahead run off of a single. Adam Tisch got the win in this game for Lake Orion. He pitched 1 1/3 innings while allowing 1 run, while Ben Ulrich came in relief for 3 innings, getting the final 9 outs to secure the Dragon victory 8-6. Chris Hegg and Teddy Hirschfield led the Dragons with multiple hits in the game. The Dragons also did a good job on the base paths as they would steal 5 bases against Notre Dame. The next game for Lake Orion would be another road game as they faced off against the Romeo Bulldogs. This game came down to the last play of the game, with the Bulldogs' Blake McCrae getting a single off of a full count pitch in the bottom of the 8th inning. McCrae would go 4 for 4 on the day, leading to the loss for the Dragons 4-5. Jake Rydquist would get the loss for the Dragons after allowing 2 runs in 1/3 of an inning. Matt Williams started the game for the Dragons, pitching 5 innings, giving up 1 run while striking out 2. Kobe Manzo led the Dragons, going 2 for 4 on the day. The following day, the Dragons would return home to play Chippewa Valley on Friday, April 12th. It was a welcome return as the Dragons scored 7 runs in the 2nd inning that would lead to a 13-1 win over Chippewa Valley. The game was broken open after Matt Williams and Jared Strauss would each get singles, and Drew Van Heck would get a home run. Jake Rydquist also added a fielder's choice in the inning. Josh Slayton got the victory on the mound for the Dragons after pitching 2 innings of 1-hit ball, while striking out 4, pushing the Dragons' record to 3-1. The varsity boys lacrosse team would start their season on March 21st with an away game against Divine Child. The Dragons would score 5 in each of the first 3 innings, leading them to the 15-1 victory over Divine Child. The Dragons looked to continue their hot start to the season with a home game against Plymouth Salem. The Dragons' offense would once again light up the scoreboard as they scored 6 goals in the first, 3 in the second, 7 in the third, and 4 in the fourth, leading to the 20-2 victory. Hunter McCarty led the Dragons with 5 goals and an assist. Joe Cady and Griffin Jaquise each had 3 goals, while Sam Perillo and Willie Hauser had 2 goals apiece. Steve Martin, Justin Nowakowski, Kyle Loken, Nicolo Ruffini, and Max Tui all had 1 goal as well. A few days later, the Dragons would travel to play Plymouth in an away game. The Dragons got off to an early lead at halftime, but Plymouth would come out of the half with a vengeance and make the comeback, winning the game 9-6 as the Dragons lose a tough one. Hunter McCarty had 2 goals, while Sam Perillo, Kyle Loken, Max Tui, and Dario Ruffini each had a goal for Lake Orion. Just 2 days later, the Dragons would once again have an away game as they traveled to play Orchard Lake St. Mary's Prep. This would be a bounce-back game for the Dragons as they scored 5 goals in the first quarter and leading the rest of the way, resulting in a 13-7 win. Hunter McCarty and Kyle Loken each had 4 goals in this game, with senior Dakota Zeller making his return to score the first goal of the game with 2 on the day. Alex Bruckner, Matt Mancini, and Nicolo Ruffini each added a goal. The Dragons would return from spring break for their first OAA Red Division game as they faced off against Birmingham United at home on April 11th. Once again, the Dragons would get off to a good start with 3 goals in the first quarter and never looking back, as they also scored 3 goals in the fourth quarter, leading to the 8-2 victory. Kyle Loken led the Dragons with 3 goals, while Hunter McCarty, Sam Perillo, Dario Ruffini, Nicolo Ruffini, and Willie Hauser each scoring a goal. Jack McLeod was fantastic in goal for the Dragons as he had 7 saves, improving the Dragons' record to 4-1. The varsity girls lacrosse team opened their season at home against Oxford on March 21st. It was as back and forth as you could expect for a rivalry game. While Oxford led for most of the game, the Dragons never quit and brought themselves within 1 point, coming up just short in this one 11-12. Allison Romansky of Lake Orion and Sol for Oxford each had 5 goals, leading the charge for each team. For Lake Orion, Natalie Mackey would have 2 goals, while Olivia Carroll, Erin Humes, Erin McGraw, and Cindy Myzensky all had a goal. In the following week, the Lady Dragons would travel to Huron High School for an away game on March 25th. This was an all-around bounce back for the Dragons as they would end up winning the game 9-5. Allison Romansky had 3 goals, Erin Humes had 2, while Natalie Mackey, Amelia Stevenson, Sydney Myzensky, and Maddie McKiernan each added a goal. Michaela Osborne and Paige Walker would help to secure the net with 5 and 8 saves respectively. The very next day, the Dragons would return home for a game against Notre Dame Prep. This game became an instant classic as both teams would go back and forth in this game, leading to a tie in regulation, resulting in 2 overtime periods. In the first overtime, the Dragons would score a goal to give them the advantage, but Notre Dame Prep came right back in the second overtime period with a goal of their own, resulting in a final score of 8-8. Allison Romansky led Lake Orion with 4 goals, while Ellie Baldwin, Erin Humes, Amelia Stevenson, and Cindy Myzensky all had a goal each. The Lady Dragons' record would finish the week at 1 win, 1 loss, and a tie. The Dragons varsity softball team kicked off their 2019 season at Utica for a doubleheader. The Dragons would cruise to a 12-2 victory in Game 1 and 10-0 in Game 2. In Game 1, Tessa Noose started things off with a walk, then would go to steal second, and that would lead to the score after a double from Peyton Shadiah. Within the same inning, Noose would come back to the plate and bring in 2 more runs off of a base hit. In the top of the 4th, Courtney Culp would double to left center, resulting in 3 RBIs. Sarah Conley was on the mound for the Dragons, pitching 6 innings, giving up just 2 runs with an incredible 12 strikeouts. Game 2 would be broken open after Kim Sosnowski hit a double with the bases loaded, scoring all 3 runners. Courtney Culp and Natalie Schifford combined for 5 innings of shutout ball, giving up only 2 hits in the game. A couple days later, the Dragons would play at Brandon, where they would defeat the Blackhawks in 5 innings, 10-0. The Dragons ran away with the game in the 3rd inning as they would score 7 runs, capped off by a 3-run homer by Courtney Culp. Sarah Conley and Natalie Schifford combined for a no-hitter in this game. Over the weekend, Lake Orion would host their own tournament on April 13th. The Dragons would win the tournament handily as they would go on to beat Swartz Creek 16-0, Milford 18-3, Brandon 17-2, and Goodrich 10-0 for the title. Some highlights from the tournament were a grand slam for Sarah Conley, along with some dominating performances on the mound. Haley Melchert having 2 big games of 4 and 5 RBIs apiece. Tessa Noose and Peyton Shadiah each had a triple with multiple RBIs in the tournament. On Tuesday, the Lady Dragons would play a doubleheader against Rochester Adams, playing on the JV field due to poor weather conditions, but that didn't stop Lake Orion from dominating both games. In Game 1, Sarah Conley would throw a no-hitter, giving up just 1 unearned run. Conley would also lead the Dragons on offense, going 2 for 4 with a double and 3 RBIs. Kim Sosnowski would also have given the Dragons a couple of runs as she went 2 for 2 in the game. The Dragons would win the Game 1 11-1, and in Game 2, Natalie Schifford would take the mound for the win, giving up 2 runs on 2 hits. Abby Maresh put the Dragons on the board first with an RBI single in the 1st inning, as she would finish the game 3 for 3 with 2 RBIs. Adams would come back in the bottom of the inning and get a run of their own, but the Dragons would score 6 in the 2nd to blow the game wide open. Kim Sosnowski would get a 2-run base hit in the inning, and Lake Orion would go on to win 12-2. The Lady Dragons' record is undefeated as they look to continue their incredible start to the season in hopes of an OAA title. The girls' varsity soccer team would get off to a tough start to the season, as they would have 3 straight road games. They would go on to drop close games to Utica, Notre Dame Prep, and Troy Athens. Utica would get the better of the Dragons on a rainy season opener for the Lake Orion, winning 3-0. At Notre Dame Prep, the Dragons found themselves in a back-and-forth game all night long, in which Notre Dame would score a goal, breaking the tie late in the 2nd half. That resulted in the 2-3 loss for the Dragons. 2 days later, the Dragons would fall to Athens 2-0. The Dragons looked to come back from spring break revitalized, and they did just that in their home opener against Oxford. Lake Orion would get on the board first with a goal from Anne-Marie Fosman. Oxford then responded in the second half with a goal of their own. However, neither team was able to break the tie, leading to that being the final result of 1-1. Lake Orion goalkeeper Alexis Delventhal had 7 saves in the game. Lake Orion would look to continue improving as they played North Farmington at home for their first divisional game. The Dragons would use this opportunity to show just what they were made of as they went on scoring spree, resulting in the 8-0 victory. Grace Cady finished with a hat trick, Anne-Marie Fosman with 2 goals, and Marissa Sidlowski, Casey Lauer, and Mattia Rourke with all add a goal for Lake Orion. The Lady Dragons would look to continue their solid play as they would play Royal Oak this past Tuesday. At halftime, the score was tied up at 3 apiece, but the second half was all Dragons as they got another 3 goals, giving Lake Orion the 6-3 victory. Anna-Marie Fosman finished with a hat trick, and Grace Cady had 2 goals. Another division win for the Dragons, improving their record to 2-3-1 as they look to continue to find their stride. The LOHS men's and women's track team's 2019 season kicked off with 2 indoor meets on March 20th at Saginaw Valley State University and at the Eastern Michigan Relays on Saturday, March 23rd. The varsity women put in some impressive performances at Saginaw Valley State, including senior Madison Eaton's win in the 60-meter hurdles, and juniors Sarah Griffin and Heather DeSamper's 1st and 3rd place in the pole vault set the tone for the day. DeSamper also was 10th in the high jump, clearing 4 feet 6 inches. The 4x300 meter relay team of Eaton, Elena Tisch, Michaela Long, and Renita Smith placed 6th overall. The Eastern Relay saw both LO men and women compete against some of the top track teams in Southeast Michigan. Top 10 finishers for the women's side saw freshman Elena Tisch place 9th overall in the 60-meter dash. Maddie Eaton and Melissa Simons placed 2nd and 3rd respectively in the 60-meter hurdles. The Dragon Relay team of Eaton, Josie Arnold, Sophie Novak, and Simons placed 2nd in the 4x400 meters. Pole vaulters Griffin and DeSamper placed 2nd and 4th overall, both setting season best vaults. The Lone Dragon first place finish came during the distance medley relay with Olivia Ames, Grace Winkler, Arnold, and Novak coming at 12 minutes 48.55 seconds. The overall team scores had Lake Orion 3rd with 48 points. Oak Park took the team title with 54. Pioneer was 2nd with 50 points. The LO men also put in some solid runs at Eastern, finishing 2nd overall in the team scoring with 37.5 points, just ahead of Oak Park. Whitmer was 1st with 53.83 points. Top 10 finishes for the Dragons include Caleb Campbell's 6th place in the 60-meter dash, Andrew Nolan's 6th place finish in the 1600-meter run. Thomas Mormon continues its dominance in the hurdles, taking 1st overall. The 4x200 and 4x400 relays were 6th and 2nd place overall. The Dragons moved into OAA Red action as they traveled to Oxford for their first outdoor meet of 2019. Here's Ian with more from Oxford.
The snow is finally gone and the track has thawed for the 2019 track season to finally get underway. Winter workouts for the Dragons paid dividends during the indoor season with hopes that all of the extra work would lead to solid early season performances. At Oxford on Wednesday, March 27th, the Lady Dragons were looking to start their defense of their OAA Red title from just a year ago, while the men were looking to improve upon the gains they made in 2018. On the ladies' side, Oxford came to run, winning the first race of the 2019 season, the 4x800 meter relay. The Dragons would respond in a big way, winning 12 of the remaining 14 events, taking the meet win, scoring 82 points to Oxford's 46. Individual winners were Melissa Simons in the 100 meters and 300 meter hurdles, Maddie Eaton in the 100 meter hurdles and 200 meter dash, Sophie Novak in the 800 and 1600 meter run, Grace Winkler in the 400 meter dash, Abby Locke in the 3200 meter run, Cassie Moreau in the discus, and Sarah Griffin in the long jump. The Dragon men were also dominant, topping Oxford 91-37. The Dragon men also won 12 events on the day. Individual winners were Caleb Campbell in the 100 meter dash, Thomas Mormon in the 110 and 300 meter hurdles, Blaze Lauer in the 200 meter dash, Sam Knight in the 400 meter dash, Andrew Nolan in the 1600 and 3200 meter run, Sebastian Marcoux in the shot put and discus, and Amaru Abdul in the long jump. The Dragons look to build on this road win when they travel to Rochester Adams on April 10th The Lady Dragons are in search of their third straight OAA Red and regional titles. To say the Dragons are on a mission in 2019, well, that would be the understatement of the year. For the LO Sports Update, I'm Ian Locke.
Thanks, Ian. The Dragons were on the road at Rochester Adams on Wednesday, April 10th, for another OAA Red dual meet. Both schools were competing in their first competition since spring break and hoped to shake off the rust. Under very cold conditions, the Dragons were just trying to stay healthy and score points. This was not a day for best times. The Lady Dragons got off on the right foot, winning the opening 4x800 meter relay and never looked back, winning 11 events overall. The Lady Dragons rolled to victory, improving their OAA Red record to 2-0 on the season. Highlight runs were put in the 100 meter dash. LO would go 1-2-3 with Maddie Eaton winning, Elena Tisch second, Chantel Stanley third. A 1-2-3 finish was also recorded in the 200 meter dash. Eaton was first, Tisch second, and Dominique McCarthy third. Sophie Novak and Josie Arnold would go 1-2 in the 800 meter run, while Novak would also win the 1600 meter run, with Abby Locke taking second. Adams was strong in the relays, but could not match LO's depth. The LO men had a little tougher time with Adams than the ladies, with both teams running to a tie. The cold would also have lasting effects on the LO men, as several weather-related injuries started to keep up during the meet. Thomas Moorman again dominated the 300 and 110 hurdle events, winning both in an impressive fashion. Caleb Campbell would win the 100 meter dash before pulling up injured in the final leg of the 4x200 meter relay, an event the Dragons were leading at the time. Andrew Nolan would again prove a dominant force, taking the 1600 meter run. The Dragons look to heal up for their next big test, the Oxford Invitational on April 27th. ONTV cameras will be there and we'll bring you all the results on our next episode. And that's it for this episode of Lake Orion Sports Update. For even more Lake Orion sports, check out our YouTube channel for our full game coverage of track, lacrosse, girls soccer, softball, and more. Visit youtube.com and search for Orion Neighborhood Television. We'll see you next time.